Hi, NRPA. My name is Jonathan Skinner, Director of Community Services for the beautiful city of Lake Elsinore.
Hi, I'm Giovanni Rivera Huerta, Public Information Officer and Special Events Manager for Lake Elsinore.
Today we're going to talk about positive communication and how you direct the story. So Giovanni has been with us for a little while. Tell us about how you came to be with the city of Lake Elsinore.
Well, thank you, Jonathan. I can tell you that when I did come to the city of Lake Elsinore, the city of Lake Elsinore was not really prepared for controlling a narrative when it comes down to media and marketing. They really lacked on that. The first thing I did, Jonathan, was come to you and we organized a plan. Part of that plan was knowing what our community needed, what it was lacking, and what direction to go. Now, with the experience that I have in broadcast journalism for over 21 years, being a national news correspondent, I saw different areas looking for different ways of marketing, but they all didn't fit because the problem is everybody has the concept of, hey, let's follow the narrative. Let's follow what the other city is doing, or let's follow what the other agency is doing. Part of that was us discussing what we can do and also look outside the box. And part of that was the main thing that we ended up finding out. What does the community want? What does the community need? And what direction do they want us to go? A lot of the times when it comes, when we do talk about what we need as a community or as a city, we always think about what we want, as personal needs. But we don't really think about what is collectively needed here. And part of that was communication, events, and something that interests the community to be stronger.
Now, a good example is when Giovanni first started, we were just coming out of the pandemic. We had put a lot of resources into a new campground called Launch Point. And we've had communication with the newspapers and everything like that, but we needed, as Giovanni says, we need that little cinnamon to make it a little better. So why don't you give them an example of what we took to do that first press conference and how it ignited everything that we had happened after that?
That's a great question. So what we did as a city is we found out first what was the collaboration between the city, the Chamber of Commerce, the Downtown Merchants Association, and everybody that participates within the success of the city. That's where we started first. Then the easy part is writing a press release and sending it out. But remember, a lot of the things that we think are interesting to the media are really not. So how did we make that interesting? Well, we gave them a reason to come. It was not just a press release exposing the event or the press conference we were trying to accomplish, but we provided them things that they can expose in their news story, interviews, a boat tour. And let me emphasize what this was about. This was reopening the lake here in Lake Elsinore after that pandemic. We were the only lake in California that never closed because we offered our amenities to doctors, to nurses, to first responders that couldn't go home because they were exposed to COVID or to the pandemic, or they worked during that pandemic. So we gave them a place to refuge themselves and be safe and also be able to enjoy the amenities we had here. So that was the selling point for us.
What do you have for us this morning at Lake Elsinore, Jennifer?
Mark and Lynette, so we talked about what you can do here, but I want to talk about the fact that you can stay here. You can bring your RV, you can bring your camper, or you can rent what we call a yurt. Take a look. John's going to give you a tour of my new favorite establishment on this entire property. If you have not been here in a long time, I'm told that it looks a whole lot different. This yurt included. How cute, beachy, fancy does this little guy look? And my favorite part, Mark and Lynette, is the air conditioning / heater. That is muy importante for glamping. That's what we call glamping in there. Fancy. Thanks, John, for showing us that beautiful little yurt. You can get it for an affordable price, I'm told. You can even bring your pups. And then you can't beat the view. Take a look at this view out here. You can watch the sunrise. You can watch the moon rise above those palm trees. Just so pretty. And they have a bunch of these. So it's not just the 2-bedroom ones. I sound like a salesman, but I swear it's just so cute. But they have an 8-person one too. And then when you come outdoors, they have a place for you to even shower and feel like you're in your own tropical area. And then over and above on the other side, I talked about those Airstreams, those vintage Airstreams. And those make you feel like you're in a total early era. What decade did those Airstreams come from, Jonathan?
Well, they started in the 40s all the way to the 70s. So we're really excited to have them. And actually, we got them from all over California.
And they basically are era and vintage, except for they have air conditioning, right?
They have air conditioning and heater. It's really great in there. And the best thing, one of the best things here, is we actually have Wi-Fi throughout the entire campground as well.
So we all talk about how the pandemic has sort of ruined places, but this has really become an oasis for people to, work from home, bring their kids from school. So have you guys talked about the chance and availability of getting people in here?
Well, we tell people to go early because, as you can see, it's getting really, really booked up. The summer actually is kind of booked up. But what they'll need to do is go to our website, which is www.launch-point.com. We have a couple of different ones, and go on and check and see. And actually, we have virtual tours that they're able to see them, and then they're able to go on a calendar and see what's available. I would say look mainly during the week.
Perfect.
And then the weekends are kind of a hit and miss because it's really busy.
Jonathan, thank you so much. Well, now is the time to be here. It's just starting to warm up. We're seeing all the boats come in. Check in next hour because I'm going to try to catch me a 5-pound catfish. Mark and Lynette, back to you.
We talked to the media and said we were the only lake in California that never closed. 1, that was the selling point. 2, what did we offer them? Well, we offered them the resources here in the city of Lake Elsinore, which was the lake, a boat tour, but also keeping in mind that we had struggles in the past years, like die-offs of fish, like algae problems. But again, we made sure that the narrative was a positive one to outweigh the negative.
Now, one of the things that people say is, well, you guys are a different city. You're a bigger city or a smaller city. The information that Giovanni's giving you here is finding that hook that's in your program that you can go ahead and control the narrative.
And part of controlling the narrative is not necessarily writing what you want the news media to disseminate. It's having them come to you needing something from you. That's controlling the narrative. If you ask them to come, the first thing they're going to discuss in their editorial meetings is, how is this going to affect the community? How is this going to benefit the community? And how is this going to give us ratings? Well, a lot of us don't realize that those 3 things are what sells a story. Selling a story can be as easy as selling a rock. And I'll explain. How do you sell a rock to create a story? Well, a rock can be sold in many ways. A rock can be something to protect you. A rock can be a foundation to start something. A rock can be something you can hold on to for protection. Those are just some examples. They might sound kind of, what are you talking about, Gio? But a story can be a story if you find the right angle to create the narrative. Remember that all the time. If you want to sell something within your community that you think it's important, but the media doesn't, you gotta find that special something that's going to attract them here and want them to be a part of that. Is as simple as finding a good opportunity of success, like you say, and find a connection to that story.
And one of the other things you need to remember too is putting the right person on the right seat of the bus. Now, what we used at that time was one of our council members, Bob McGee, was an angler. So he talked a lot about the fishing that was going on. Because a lot of the times they were worried about COVID and how the fish were affected by COVID. Well, we had him up there as a spokesperson and was able to control that narrative and giving them that information about it's okay to fish.
This place has been re-energized. And while we never closed during COVID, let me say that again, we never closed during COVID. Our lake, our beaches, our parks, our outdoor active lifestyle never ceased. We are here today to reintroduce the world to our beautiful 3,000-acre jewel. This is a playground. Whether you're here to jump off the Ortega Mountains on a hang glider or to jump out of a perfectly good airplane at Skydive Elsinore. What we say here in Lake Elsinore is, if you can't find something to do, you're not looking hard enough. So bring your family, bring your pets, bring all your toys, and if you don't have any toys, we'll rent you some toys. Bring them all out here to Lake Elsinore and live the dream. Get yourself one of these annual passes and you'll never be bored again. Thank you all for coming.
Now, how did that affect us when we did that whole press conference? How did it affect us over the next couple of weeks after we did that whole press conference?
Well, it affected us very positively. We trended in what we call the news media rating chart for the next 3 weeks. How did that happen? Well, we provided them the story, like I mentioned. We were not only locally broadcasted, we were broadcasted nationally because we created an interest of our story to the rest of the nation. And that interest was that we were open during that pandemic and we serviced those men and women that that worked during that pandemic. And lots of organizations, including municipalities and schools and many other places closed down except us in this region. So we were a safe haven, if you will, for those people. That's what caused the interest. But what I want to also elaborate on is that a lot of us that work in municipalities and take the charge in the public information sector or special events, we're always afraid of what's going to happen if we fail. It's okay to fail. Why is it okay to fail? Because if you don't fail, you do not know what you did wrong. Now, I'm not saying trial and error all the time. I'm saying don't be afraid to put that step forward, walk with your ideas, get the buy-in of your staff, of your team, and that's how you become successful. That's how you control the narrative, and that's how you can get the buy-in of your community. A community that's well-informed, a community that knows that you're providing what they want, and a community that understands what you're trying to disseminate is going to be a happy community and a very supportive one.
And that leads into a really good example of a negative type of situation that we're able to turn into a positive. Once Giovanni got here, in 2019, we had a poppy bloom. It wasn't just a regular poppy bloom. You were able to see it from space. So we had, as I say, 100,000 of our closest friends that came into a community that was really, about 65, 70,000 people. Our roads were impacted. Our community was impacted. Stores were sold out of goods. And we actually had people that were injured during that time. We were trying to communicate a message, trying to control the narrative, where we had at least 5 to 10 different agencies that were trying to communicate that information, and it unfortunately didn't come out correctly. So learning from our mistakes, and Giovanni came in, actually started controlling the narrative. So when we came forward to 2023, Giovanni was there to help control that narrative.
For over 21 years, like I mentioned, I was a national news reporter. But what did I learn from that? I learned that every time I would go into a community was always lacking the most important part that a journalist needs, and that's providing information, the correct information, and the direction. Direction. The direction is very simple. The direction of where the story is headed, how it's affecting the residents, how it's affecting the community that lives around these residents, and the impact, economical impact, and then also the struggles that residents will have to face because they've been displaced, or because now they have to worry about when is this going to end and how is this going to keep me safe. Well, during this time, I covered here in the city of Lake Elsinore prior to me getting involved with the city, or getting hired, should I say. I covered the fires. 3 days before the Holy Fire, I moved in to my home. We were evacuated. I had to not only move my stuff out again, but I reported for the first time ever in front of my own home, hoping that we would not burn down. The fire was intense. During that time, I realized that the city of Lake Elsinore was really not prepared to face a major disaster and disseminate information. Remember, during a major incident, you have the collaboration of local, state, federal officials coming in to trying to, one, assist with the incident, two, to try to mitigate the incident, and three, to try to inform the community. But what does the saying say? When there's more chiefs than Indians, it's chaotic. That's how it was during the fire, during the floods following the fire, and then during the poppy bloom. But after the poppy bloom, then comes the fish die-off. So for several months consecutively, back to back to back, the city of Lake Elsinore was in the eye of the nation from disaster after disaster after disaster. Now, the information was disseminated, but it was disseminated amongst several agencies, which made it chaotic because there was not one source of direction. And I can say that because I was in front of the camera. I was trying to receive information, but the information was not being brought to us. So what do journalists do? Journalists go out and find information. We will get Joe from down the street. So what do you know? Oh, my house was on fire. 3 people died. Is that true? No. Fortunately, it's our job to also maintain the credibility of the story. But sometimes we let things go that might not be truthful because we are in the middle of it sounds true because this is what the city is saying, and this sounds similar because this is what the county or federal officials are saying. But remember, there's not one line of direction. So people blame the media. As media, we have to now narrate the story to what we're seeing. And visually is something more impactful than what you want to hear on TV. That's why a lot of the news reporters will say, the fire is raging behind me. The people are being evacuated. And it sounds so alarming when it's probably just 3 or 4 acres. But we don't know that. We just know what's happening behind us and not really knowing what the information is. So going back to how we started controlling the narrative, I started seeing that there was no direction of communication. So when I got hired, I said, Jonathan, and we got the city manager involved. We said, this is what we need to do. We need to spearhead the narrative. We need to go and establish the A, B, and C. What are the A, B, and C? Well, you need to know who's going to be the head, who's going to be the leading agency, who is going to be writing the narrative, and usually that's the case of the leading agency. But how do you support? The third one is, how do you support those two? As a city, we have to support if this incident has been managed now by the county or the feds. We step back and we're now their support. But if it's happening in our city, we still have the obligation to inform our community and the people that we need to inform. Example, during the fish die-off, the narrative was, it's the phos check from the fire that is contaminating the lake. That's not true. Unfortunately, Lake Elsinore has gone through many, many years of algae blooms because we're a natural resource. This is not the only place this happens. This happens across the country and it happens yearly. But the narrative was because the phos check of the fire coming down from the mountains into the lake, because that's where the runoff goes off. Could that be an issue? Perhaps. But we did not, as journalists, have physical or scientific evidence of that being the case. But we know for a fact what is fact, if you will. And that's that the algae blooms are here, are part of nature's part of, making the clean lake. So again, controlling the narrative, finding the direction, and also knowing what's important to your community for information.
Now, that leads on to something else, because we're talking a lot about a lot of different activities that we have, and one of them that actually started with, and Giovanni mentioned it, finding out the information that the community needs. We did basically a community needs assessment, our 2040 plan, which basically says, what do you want to be when you grow up as a city. And what we found was 67% of our community is Hispanic, but a lot of our programming wasn't that way. So working with Giovanni, we actually came up with a program called Mariachi Fest. Tell them about how the Mariachi Fest started and where we're at now.
Well, that's an
And remember, we only have 45 minutes.
yeah, that's an excellent example. Mariachi Fest. When I got into the special events planning for the City of Lake Elsinore, Jonathan brought me in and said, "Hey, what do you think we can do? How can we set, our department for success and the city for success?" My first job again was to research what the need of the community wants, what the demographic is, and also what event is going to tie in not just one sector of the community, but bring the community together. Remember, there's a lot of events we can create as a community service department, or a city, but we have to think what connects the pieces together. It's not about just throwing out events because we can do that all day. The events are the simple thing to create. The hard part is to bring together the community. And when I created Mariachi Fest, I said demographic. Okay, over 60%. Great. Hispanics, okay. What is the community here in California normally like? It's very rare if you say you don't like Mexican food, tacos, burritos, and who doesn't like a great time with a mariachi or folklorico group to tie in culture? Now, if that wasn't the case, we wouldn't have hundreds of thousands of Mexican food restaurants. Same case for Asian food. Same case for, Southern food. You just look where you're living and you're going to find what that need is. And if you don't see it, that's because there's a lack of it. And if there's a lack of it, how do you tie that in? Well, Mariachi Fest was created. Mariachi Fest was created not only for the cultural portion of it, but because I knew it would tie in not just our community together, but it would bring people from outside of our community to come and invest here, to purchase, to buy tickets, to after the concert go out for a night in the town. And it did. We started the first year with a budget of $15,000. I thought to myself, we're going to make it happen. It's very hard, but we're going to make it happen. I ended up using my resources, contacts here in the city with organizations that I knew had big followings. I put a lineup together. I went then, to my colleagues on TV and radio stations, asked for their buy-in. Now, you might be thinking, oh, well, you come from 21 years of TV. They're going to know you, and they're going to give you the green light, and they're going to support you. Trust me, that wasn't the case. The case is that I had to make a case, if you will, to them, to be interested. And as soon as I told them this was going to be in the Magic 100, the Magic 100 is that the city of Lake Elsinore, we are 100 miles from San Diego, 100 miles from Los Angeles, from Palm Springs, and just over the hill from Orange County. So when I sold that and said, hey, this is going to be an event that will be iconic and a signature event, some laughed. The first year, we had an attendance of 2,800 people, more than we expected at Diamond Stadium, Lake Elsinore Diamond Stadium, the home of the Lake Elsinore Storm. The second year, I always say, we add cinnamon on top. What's that cinnamon? That's something else the others don't have. Now, some of you might live in Texas. Some of you might live in Chicago, where you do have these big mariachi festivals, like the Mariachi USA. But again, it wasn't about finding out how I can do it the same. It was how I can do it different. And we did. We did it at a baseball stadium. We did it down in an area where many people would attend. Second year, 3,900 people. This year, in its third year that we just finished, in 2023, we went over 4,800 people. Now, the budget has grown a little bit, but the city has not spent no more than $20,000 each event because everything else comes from sponsors that now want to be a part of it. And it's my pride to say that the Mariachi Fest in Southern California is the premier mariachi festival of the Inland Empire, because we invite everybody from barbecue vendors to tacos to burritos, the famous cantaritos, and we incorporated this last year that extra cinnamon with a tequila mezcal tasting, which was a phenomenal hit. Now we invite everybody for next September 21st.
So, in addition to that, we try to use that cinnamon, as Giovanni says, and that narrative of going forward to promote our other programs as well. One of them that we have, which is our biggest signature event, Winterfest, happens the first Saturday of every December. When we first started out, before I got here, we had it actually on a Friday, and we changed the narrative because everybody thought about being on Friday, moving to Saturday. We went from 800 people to over 2,000 people. Over the years, we added some different information. Now, what we also did is we controlled the media narrative as well. And, again, thanks to Giovanni, don't tell him I like this guy. We started doing more things, and thanks to John Hess and his team, we actually started putting it on TV and also on Facebook. Now, what we were able to do there was to get people who used to live in Lake Elsinore to view the parade, which we actually took from daytime to nighttime. We found out what the public wanted. As we said, did our market research and found out they love to see lights on parades. So Giovanni and the team got together. We did a parade. We actually changed the parade route as well and ran it downtown. Thanks to John and Giovanni, we started putting on Facebook. Then we put it on local cable television. Our numbers went up exponentially. This last year, we had over 12,000 visitors of our, what we call it, 12,000 of our closest friends that come downtown. But we also had, we saw the impressions that we had globally as far as Facebook and those kind of things. It was over
63,000 people.
63,000 people.
And the best part of that, Jonathan, is, again, we always talk about quality over quantity. Now, we all think that we have to do big major productions and big major events. But again, an event or a press conference or a filming like a live broadcast of a parade, of a community parade, doesn't happen if you don't really give the people what they want. You can have talking heads, no pun intended, talking heads talking, about the parade and everything, but you have to make it appealing and attractive. And we're fortunate enough to have John Hess and his company. And you guys can't see John Hess, but John Hess is behind these cameras, and his production staff has been very essential to helping us out, creating the great content we have. But again, it's a collaboration between organizations like John Hess and his team, the city, community services, Launch Point, the Chamber of Commerce, everyone. That's what makes a successful event, because then we involve the Chamber of Commerce. We know what the business owners want. We involve the Downtown Merchants Association. We know what the downtown, community wants. We get, we talk to different agencies like the Storm, our partners from the Storm. And that, at the end of the day, becomes a marketing strength when you have more than one person marketing an event. Because now you have the collaboration of many other organizations. Now, yes, there's some struggles. It's not all perfect. Some organizations are going to say, then why I have to share your information? Why can't you just share my information? Well, then you leave it up to them. As long as they brand the same message, how it looks doesn't matter. The information is the most important part of getting a successful event across, or any type of, information. Remember, doesn't matter how many hands you have in the pot as long as you have one leader and one direction and one message.
So, Giovanni, thinking about everything we just talked about right now, we talk about the 5 W's: the who, what, when, where, why. What would you think anybody who's watching this would take away as the 5 W's to have a successful communications, to make sure they're impactful and they get out the right message?
Excellent question. And I won't go in order, but the why. That's simple. It explains itself. Why are you doing this? You have to know why you're doing something. It can't just be because your boss told you, I need this done right now. I need you to create something. Well, that's fine. We can create an event. We can create anything, but we have to know why. The where is very important. You got to know where to do it. And it sounds dumb. Oh, yeah, well, I can do it anywhere. No, you have to find a place where the community is going to feel comfortable. You can't do it too far to the west because the people in the east won't travel to the west. You can't do it downtown all the time because the people from downtown might say, I don't have the right buy-in to that. I don't know if I really want to go downtown because I can go to another downtown to do whatever I can do there. Or that's why it's important to find out why it's important to do it that where spot. That where spot can be where you're going to get more engagement, where you're going to get more buy-in, and more than anything is where the community is going to have enough, space to enjoy the event, parking, vendor space, all that great stuff. Now, some of us in different cities might be limited. Well, how do you work around that? We use Getterman Square, which is our parking lot. A parking lot that is also meant for special events, but we now put all the vendors there. Yes, we eliminate the parking for about 200 people, but we also find alternatives where they can park. So the where is always important. Now, the who is who's going to spearhead it. Who's going to spearhead it and who's going to be the chief of the tribe. Now, the chief of the tribe doesn't mean he's a dictator. Remember that, okay? Because as we all know, we work in a collaboration with a group of people within the municipality. Do we all get along? We all know we don't. It's okay to disagree and it's okay to not get along, but you also have to get everyone's buy-in because even the naysayers will sometimes open your eyes to things that you didn't think about. So always understand who is very important because that's a chief, the chief of the tribe and the leader that's going to be able to listen to even the guy he doesn't like. Okay? Very simple. The what. The what is very important. The what are we doing is important because we need to know exactly what we need to accomplish, not what other cities are doing, not what we saw on social media, or not what is important to us personally. That's why the what is important. Now, again, we can create events and do things blindsided pretty much. But what? But what are we going to do that's going to cause the interest of your community? What is going to fulfill their need? And what's going to educate them at the end of the day as well? Remember, an event can be a great event this small or that big. It's the what that's important.
I think the when is really important when you talk about programming and when you do it. For instance, we've had a couple of different events that's happened in the city. One was Oktoberfest, and typically what we did is when we're doing our publicity and everything, we looked at when it was done by other municipalities. What we found out was the best time to do it was actually not in October because it says Oktoberfest, but in September.
In September, and that was an eye-opener for me. I did not realize that Oktoberfest is the last week of September. That's where it originally kicks off, traditionally in Germany. So for me, it was like, hold on, let me kind of research this, and it was right. But the conception again is that everybody around us, municipalities, private organizers, everybody did it in October. So when I researched dates, it was wide open. So we locked it in for the last week of September, and now we're hosting our very first Oktoberfest, a very traditional Oktoberfest here in Lake Elsinore with Oompa bands, a German MC, you name it, Wiener Schnitzel and all that other good stuff. The chicken, I didn't even know the chicken dance was, part of the German tradition. So I'm ready to all day long.
And one of the things too that we did when we looked at the marketing of it is the win was really important because Mariachi Fest is the week before, which also celebrates
Right, Hispanic Heritage Month. And that brings me up to a great point. The win is very important as well when it comes down to marketing strategy. When we create events here in the city of Lake Elsinore, we strategize on other events. We piggyback off them. We cross-market. We think ahead of time. If there's an event in September, I want to be able to start marketing my event for October at that event when I have the attention of thousands of people already attending, which for us, it's really effective because during the time that we have a festival or a gathering or an event, we're throwing it out there. Next month, downtown Lake Elsinore, we have, a classic car show, but we're letting people know what we have a month ahead of time. So now it's on their calendar or within the radar, and now we know they're going to be interested in coming. Now, is there a lot of things going on sometimes? Absolutely. But again, if you let people know with time, they'll plan ahead of time. It's a strategy. I didn't invent. It's a strategy that people think that we need to reinvent the wheel. And it's really not about reinventing the wheel. It's about sticking to what really works.
Giovanni, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to talk to us about what's going on here. We want to thank NRPA for giving us the opportunity to share what we do as far as getting that information out correctly, the good, the bad, and the ugly about telling a story. Let's give them some takeaways from this. For me, personally, having the right people on the bus. You got to make sure that you have the right chief, and it doesn't have to be the director of community services. It has to be the ones who know best about the activity and the best ways to market it and get it out there. Make sure that you have the right information and is going to the right resources. Using newspapers, using Facebook, using social media is really good, but make sure the message that you put across is the right message. And make sure that the information is consistent and constant. That way people will be able to see it more often than once.
And my takeaways for you are to not reinvent the wheel. Okay, don't reinvent the wheel. Many people think that social media is our savior to marketing and is going to get across everything we need through the social media platforms. I think by this time you all know that's not true. If we went back 10 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, I can agree with you. But there's so much information going on social media that even you watching this go through it if it doesn't catch your eye. But how does that catch your eye? You have to provide something that your community is going to be interested in, and we hear about it all the time. So when you think about what you're going to take away, listen to your community. Listen to what the residents are asking for, because that is going to not only create engagement, interest, but it's also going to create the most important part, which is controlling the narrative and sending out the information that you want to be disseminated to the right people. The last part for me is we all deal with our keyboard warriors, whether it may be on social media or whether it be just somebody writing emails to us. But you all know when we read these emails and we read what's going on with these posts, and you have these private social media outlets attacking the city, a lot of the information is not even correct. They're not educated. A lot of the cities are afraid to engage with them. Don't be afraid to engage with the community that's attacking you. The best thing you can do is, instead of being confrontational, is educate them and say, sorry, your information is misleading and it's not correct, but this is the correct information. Please help us disseminate that information. You're not offending anybody. You're not being confrontational. You're simply educating the individual that's stirring up the pot. Very simple. So don't be afraid to engage. Don't be afraid to control the narrative. And remember, controlling the narrative starts with the people that have the information and want it to be disseminated to the public.
Thank you, Giovanni. Listen, we want to thank NRPA for this opportunity to share our knowledge of how to put together some good information, the good, the bad, and the ugly of storytelling. If you would like to reach us, you can reach us at www.lake-elsinore.org. From the beautiful city of Lake Elsinore, from Giovanni Huerta and Jonathan Skinner, thank you for watching.